The 10x Rule by Grant Cardone. So what is the 10x Rule, and how could this help us in our quest for achieving results, success in areas like business or whatever area of our life that we choose? Well, you must set targets that are 10 times higher than what you think you want, and then do 10 times what you think you will accomplish to achieve these targets. Essentially, doing 10 times the effort. So the concept behind the book is that most of us set our goals too low, set them way too conservative. And the truth is that we have far more capacity, far more ability than we give ourselves credit for. And I think one of the reasons why this is true is because we're constantly looking around to see what everyone else is doing. And for the most part, a lot of people do not really appreciate what they have, their abilities, the opportunities. And a lot of times they tend to focus on what they don't have control over, or are constantly being bombarded by marketing and distraction, which is taking away from what they really want to do and putting their attention and awareness on the things that other people tell them that they should do. When we recalibrate this focus, we'll start to realize that we actually have far more capacity and ability than we give ourselves credit for. And a lot of times, going after developing this ability or achieving the results requires focus, hard work, discipline, and really evaluating where our time, our energy, our opportunity cost goes. And for a lot of people, this can seem kind of stressful and feel overwhelming and something that is undesirable. But if you realize that true happiness is found in chasing a worthy ideal or going after a worthy ideal, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, as Earl Nightingale talks about in The Strangest Secret, which I did a video on, recommend that you watch that video and listen to The Strangest Secret. Once you realize that there's a lot of joy in doing that, you'll discover happiness like most people have never discovered. You'll find that there's a lot of happiness in the process of achieving a worthy ideal. So when you couple that with the fact that you have far more ability than you give yourself credit for, you'll start to realize that you can actually 10x your happiness by 10xing your goals, 10xing the amount of actions you take. Massive thoughts must be followed by massive actions. There's nothing ordinary about the 10x rules. It is simple what it says. It is 10 times the thoughts and 10 times the actions of the people. So essentially, raising the bar up, looking at your goals, evaluating them and saying, am I selling myself too short? Am I playing too small? Now, if your goal is not to become the best or achieve a high level of success in whatever area you choose, then this book is not going to be for you, and the information contained within this video, and arguably most of the information that I share about my channel, is actually not going to be for you. However, if you do find yourself desiring to look at what your capability is, your maximum potential, develop it, and really push the bar, then you're going to find this to be very inspiring. And when you raise the bar up, you realize that there's far more things that you have to work on, far more skills, far more abilities you have to develop. The cool thing is that there's tons of books, tons of resources, videos, training, different kinds of knowledge and expertise that's available to help you grow. So this is an exciting time that we live in. And if you choose to 10x and evaluate your goals and realize that you're playing too small and you want to raise the bar up and 10 times the goals, essentially raise the bar and pick higher level goals, then the support is available to you today more than ever before. And that's very, very exciting. That's the premise of this book, to 10x. So we're getting into the key concepts in a moment. But let's talk about some of the mistakes that people make when they go out and set goals. Essentially, we have to start by first setting goals. Napoleon Hill talks about this in Think and Grow Rich. If you haven't read that book, it's a classic. It's a book that changed my life back in 2005. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and it's about setting goals, what he calls the definite purpose. So number one, miss targeting by setting objectives that are too low and don't allow for enough correct motivation. When your goals are too low, it's hard to get excited because the outcomes or the desires that we have might seem mediocre at best and not as inspiring. If you start to dream big, and a good book to read is The Magic of Thinking Big, one of my earlier videos I did, I'll put a link in the description, on that book, once you start to dream big, you start to tap into that childlike motivation that you inherently had when you were a child. Think of the time when you were a child and you wanted to achieve a high level of result, whether you wanted to be an astronaut or whatever it is. Feel the excitement that you had when you were a child and realize that you have that ability to tap into that excitement if you set your goals at a high level, if you 10x your goals. If you don't do that, then you're going to find that you're not going to have a lot of motivation to achieve the lower level goals, the very conservative goals that you set for yourself. This gives us an enormous amount of power. We start to realize that the motivation is actually within us and we have to evoke it. We have to go back to times in our life when we were highly motivated, when this entire world that we live in, we weren't jaded by a lot of experiences that might have set us back and then quote unquote got us to rationalize what is possible and what is not possible. And we have to start looking at opportunities and possibilities that maybe those disempowering thoughts that we have as a result of failures or different kinds of life experiences are not always true in all circumstances, and that there is a possibility that if we set another high level goal, that with the current level of intelligence that we have and the experience that we have, that we can actually probably hit that goal. And just that idea alone should evoke motivation, should evoke excitement. Number 2, severely underestimating what it takes in terms of actions, resources, money, and energy to accomplish the target. So, if you don't have a lot of money, then be prepared to take a lot of action and work with the various other resources that you have. You have access to people, resources, and those people have access to other resources and creative thinking, knowledge, information, which is a lot of times free, especially on YouTube, on the internet. You can get access to information, different resources that is going to educate you, but more importantly, help you take constructive actions. The key word is to take action, and that action is going to take energy towards achieving your goals. Now, most of the time, we underestimate it. You see, let's take business, for example. In order to create money, in order to create wealth or any substantial results in business, you have to provide real, concrete value in the marketplace, something that the prospects and the customers decide as valuable. You can't tell them what valuable is. They have to believe that it's valuable, what you're offering. And if they see it as value, then they're going to buy it. But a lot of times we underestimate what we believe is value. And when you start to realize that there's so many ways to optimize what we have, the products or services that we're offering, or even switch the products and services around and really pay attention, ideally, at the end of the day, of what the marketplace wants and begin to work towards generating that value, you eventually get to a point where the marketplace reciprocates by starting to pay you. And the more you multiply the value in various shapes and forms, the more money comes back. Now, this is obviously easier said than done because there's a lot more variables to this equation. But fundamentally speaking, oftentimes we underestimate what is required to achieve success. So this is one of the things that has held us back previously in our previous 10x attempts, because arguably most of us at an early stage in life had many goals that were very 10x like, but we didn't achieve them. And a lot of times it's because we underestimated the amount of effort, the amount of creative thinking, the amount of dedication, discipline required to hit those goals. And when we didn't hit it, we didn't look at it as underestimating. Instead, we might have blamed external sources. This is one of the things that I found to be, in my personal experience, the differentiating factor between those that create results in business and those that do not. The ones that create results keep looking for ways to multiply the value that they give to their prospects and clients. While the ones that have a very low likelihood of creating success are not interested in creating value, but they're interested in going into the marketplace and trying to take as much money as they can. And while that might work in some shady methodologies, it'll come to bite you later, so that's not the strategy we want to use. Good book to read is The Go Giver. I did a video on that. And once you realize that by creating lots of value and what value means to the marketplace is the focal point, then you start to recalibrate your brain in a different direction, and you start to look for ways to do it. There's many ways of doing it depending on your industry or your market, many different ways. Number 3, spending too much time competing and not enough time dominating their sector. What this means to me is that a lot of people are looking at what everyone else is doing and worrying too much about competition and putting too much emphasis on getting pulled into a different direction and essentially looking at what everyone else is doing instead of focusing on what you have control over right now to produce the most value in your sector. Okay? So when you're studying information, when you're learning, when you're taking action, a lot of it should be geared towards generating real concrete value for the marketplace. And worrying about the competition and bickering and complaining, gossiping, and essentially partaking in activities that are just based on envy or fear or scarcity is moving you away from creating that value. Number 4, underestimating the amount of adversity that they will need to overcome in order to actually attain their desired goal. Setting the goal, writing it down, being clear of it is part of the process. When you start to realize the actions involved, or even if you take the first action, you might be met with resistance from people around you, resistance from your family, resistance from the marketplace. You might be facing rejection. You might fear loneliness or whatever else that comes, being misunderstood. A lot of things will happen, and you can consider all that to be adversity in the beginning, and it'll be kind of undesirable. Later on, you'll realize how to rewrite the story, rewrite the meaning to these different scenarios and different reactions that happen as a result of you taking action into one that is more empowering. And a good book to read is What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. I did a video on that, put a link in the description. But what will happen is that you will encounter adversity, and a lot of times you'll find that this adversity can be resolved within. It's usually not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. Okay? It's usually not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. And again, that's easier said than done. And a good book to read is The 33 Strategies of War. The earlier chapters, one of my favorite quotes is, amidst the turmoil of events, do not lose your presence of mind. Again, easier said than done. But the only way to really train that is to actually proactively put yourself into adversity, constructive adversity. The more you place yourself in constructive adversity as you move adversity to move towards your 10x goal, the more skills you're going to develop and the greater presence and tolerance and frame and confidence you're going to have, which is going to allow you to maintain a certain level of calm or a certain level of tranquility while taking action, while making quick decisions. The key is to be graceful, calm while taking actions and being logical and also intuitive, doing two things, which can seem kind of opposite, logical and intuitive. You got to have both. You got to have critical thinking and you got to have sharp, intuitive judgments, which a lot of times might go against logic, but you got to have both. It might sound confusing in the beginning. And that's why the only way to develop this and really understand, again, a quote from 33 Strategies of War, Fingerspitzengefühl, which is a German military term which means fingertip feel, the ability to make quick decisions depending on the present moment and the many dynamics that are in play, which a lot of times people don't have the ability to manage the large volumes of complexity and be able to come up with a quick decision, is something that is developed by placing yourself in constant amounts of creative adversity. And there's no better way of creating that creative adversity than to 10x your goals and focus on high-level goals, because then you're going to place yourself in more challenges. So let's look at some of the key concepts that were covered in the book. Number 1 is assume control of everything. So this is about taking responsibility. Very important. One of the things that you'll find is that successful people, or those that are very seasoned in achieving high levels of results, assume responsibility and assume control of everything. And then they place themselves in situations where they're the cause rather than the effect. And when they find themselves being the effect, they start to look at how they can switch the story around in their mind, look at opportunities, look at things that they can do so they can gain control and become the cause, essentially grab control of the steering wheel. If you don't look at reality that way, then you're going to find that you're going to always be a result of what's happening based on the external world, based on what other people do to you, and so forth. Now, there are things that are beyond your control, but believe me, far more things are within your control than you can possibly imagine. You just go through experience and do this every single day, work towards your goal, and you'll start to see how things back in the days which seemed out of your control are now within your control. And that's the part that raises your self-confidence at a real, authentic level. It's not fake, it's real core confidence. It is a result of first assuming responsibility for everything, and number two, looking to see how you can change situations that might seem out of your control and make them in control in your favor by evaluating the scope of options and taking action. So success is not something that happens to you, it's something that happens because of you and because of the actions you take. People who refuse to take responsibility generally don't do well at taking much action, and subsequently don't do well in the game of success. Okay, so people who refuse to take responsibility generally don't take as much action, and the reason why is because they can't see. If you orient your brain and you focus on how you don't have control or you don't have responsibility, then you're not going to evoke the creative thinking required to find out how you can take action or optimal ways of doing things. This is an interesting, you can say it's a trick or a calibration for the brain. But when you first start by telling yourself that I can figure out a way, this is, whatever's happening to me right now, I can figure out a way to overcome it. I believe, despite what everybody else is saying or despite what people around me are feeling, I can come up with a way to figure this out. And I know that I could do this. I know that I have enough resources, even if it doesn't seem like I have a lot. I'm probably undervaluing and underestimating the amount of resources I have, whether it's time, energy, money, opportunity cost, people that I can collaborate with, that I can work with to produce this result. And a lot of times you'll find that it's within your control. And in earlier stages, we'll go around looking from, we'll go into different seminars, get into different books, try to connect and network with people because we're looking for the solution to our problem. But then when you get to a higher level of success, we realize that the solution to our problem was always in front of our face. So I think that it's good to pause and become very resourceful. Okay, that's why I love the concept of minimalism, because it forces you to become resourceful, to look at what you have right now as raw material to work with, to train your ability to think creatively, to work with what you have to solve your problems. Successful people hate the blame game and know that it is better to make something happen, good or bad, than to have it happen to you. So in earlier stages of our journey, we tend to be more of the effect. A lot of things seem to be out of our control. And as we progress, as we stay disciplined, as we stay on course, we start to realize that there were more possibilities and more ways of solving past problems, but we get better at solving our current problems, and now we know how to work with different resources to a higher level. And what the net result of that is we become more responsible. We know how to make things happen, and the more we continue on that journey for years and decades, we eventually get to a point where we differentiate ourselves from a lot of people. We become the people that are the go-to problem solvers. You become the person, and this is where you become a really valuable consultant or an expert in your industry or expert in what you do, because when people need help, they turn to you, and you give them different solutions to problems with the resources they have. So a lot of times they think, hey, they come to you and they say, well, what do I need to solve this problem? Do I need to get this? And they're talking about some external thing. And you say to them, look, you actually have the solution within your pool of resources right now. And all you got to do is just do this and that and work with it this way. And that will solve your problem. And they'll say, wow, I didn't see that. And the reason why they couldn't see that is because they just haven't experienced enough. And one day they will see it if they continue down the path. So in earlier stages, things have control over you, and as you continue on this journey and you stay disciplined, you'll start to have control of the environment, and on top of that, you'll find yourself being in more situations where you give yourself more options to control the dynamics. So you won't place yourself in situations, because you realize that this is really valuable too. You don't want to place yourself in situations where you have limited control. As you start to mature, as you start to grow, as you start to produce results, you'll automatically, and you'll have a genuine deep desire to place yourself in situations, environments, different kinds of dynamics where you control the cards, you control the variables. And the reason why you do this is not because you're a control freak, but because of your abilities. And the more variables that you have within your control when you're at that level, the more raw resources and raw materials that you have to work with to produce results. But what it entails is, in the beginning, you start with a mindset. And the mindset is assume control over everything and to remove the blame game. Okay, this is really, really important. This might take years or even decades to overcome it. But try to remove as much blame. Anytime you blame the environment, blame the marketplace, blame anyone, try to remove as much blame as possible, because if you do that, you recalibrate the brain to look for opportunities to be more resourceful with what you have. Next, someone once said, no matter where I go, there I am. It's actually one of my favorite sayings. No matter where you go, there you are. Okay, this little saying suggested to me that I'm both the problem and the solution. So a lot of people think that by getting a new piece of software, like in business, for example, and I've been consulting for many years right now as part of my business, is they feel that by getting a new piece of software or switching things around by using a new technique, that their problems and their revenue is going to increase. Essentially, everything is going to get better. But what they haven't changed is their philosophy and their mindset, and everywhere they go, there they are. So what happens is when the new technology goes in, they bring with them their philosophy and mindset and their way of looking at things, and they find a way to make that technology overly complicated, and as a result, it doesn't end up working. So what we have to do is look at the key philosophies in our mindset that we need to develop. Okay, and a lot of them, arguably all of them, are in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and we're actually going to get into the different elements in this section, the 32 success characteristics, a little later in this video. But working on those elements, which a lot of them are mindset, will allow you to change internally the person that you are, and it'll make it grow you, I should say, into a higher success probable mindset and way of being, so that when you do get whatever the fancy technology or whatever else, resources or the capital, so a lot of people think that money is going to solve the problem, so they go out looking for investors to provide money for their business. And when they get that money, they kind of blow it because they haven't learned how to work with money. They haven't developed the ability to leverage money, and they don't understand investing and being conscious with the spending and looking at return on investment and key performance indicators. They haven't developed all those things. And by the way, it might seem overwhelming, and there's a lot of things. And the truth is, the reality is, there is a lot of things. Okay, this is not easy. Business success is not easy. It takes a long time to learn and develop, but you can fast track it by studying these kind of concepts and taking notes and working on certain elements that are recommended by those that have already achieved success, and then finding mentors and finding people to be around that have a higher level of success, because they'll teach you essentially what you need to do to learn so you can have good foundational understanding and internal belief systems, so that no matter where you go, you're bringing your best self. And if you get the capital, for example, the investment, if you have a startup and you have the right mindset and you have all these foundational things, which again comes through experience and then also partnering with people who have the experience, even if you don't have the experience. If you bring that to the table and then you get the capital, you're more likely to double or triple, whatever, produce return on that investment. Because when somebody invests in you, whether it's time, energy, or money, they're looking for a return on that investment, and you're more likely to bring that return on investment if you develop yourself. So don't look for the solution externally. Try to look for the solution internally in the beginning and arguably all the time. And then if you do get some influx of capital or you get some external support, you'll value it better, and it will be something that will actually leverage and multiply your growth, rather than actually become a thing that's going to add more complexity because you don't know what to do with it and be overwhelmed by it. So let's look at the 4 degrees of action. Okay, so if you want to fast track and produce the results that I'm talking about here and what's covered in the book, then you want to keep into consideration these degrees of actions. And essentially what you want to do is you do number 4. But let's talk about number 1. Number 1 is essentially doing nothing. You're not taking action. Doing nothing is exactly what it sounds like. No longer taking actions to move yourself forward in order to learn, achieve, or control some area. People who do nothing in their career, relationships, or whatever they want have probably given up on their dreams and are now willing to accept pretty much whatever comes their way. This is usually the case that I find, because I'm 38 years old. I'm going to be 38 this year. It's usually the case that I find when people are in their late 20s or early 30s. You know, when they were younger, they had all these dreams, they had all these aspirations, but they tried some things, and again, they underestimated the amount of effort, the amount of skills that needed to be developed, the amount of focus, the amount of discipline required. And when they didn't get the results, they just kind of assumed that they gave it their best. The truth is they didn't give it their best. And to each their own. Everybody can choose whatever life they want. And if you really want to produce a high level of results, a lot of times we underestimate. But one of the side effects of giving up on setting high levels of goals is that we're more likely to do nothing because we have kind of in a way given up. And I also believe in how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you give up in one area of your life, you'll start giving up in other areas of your life also, and you'll start to lose your vibrant glow and your zest for life and your passion and your excitement. It'll start to go away. So what I find is that there's actually a smaller percentage of people in my age group of 37, 38 that still have that kind of childlike passion and excitement towards growing their business and building their whatever fitness or improving their relationships, an insatiable desire to learn and grow. And when they do have it, they carry with them a lot of passion, a lot of excitement. And I mentioned this earlier, that if you raise your goals to a high level, you evoke this motivation, this passion, this excitement in you, and it actually, I believe, is it keeps you youthful. It gives you this kind of energy and this glow in your eyes and this energy in your voice that other people can feel, but it makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. It makes you want to stay disciplined and eat healthy and exercise and do all these different supporting things that support whatever goal it is you're after. Like, for example, for me, I'm always raising the bar on business goals. I'm always looking to get involved with another project or optimize and grow my projects and so forth. And this makes my life very meaningful. It keeps it very exciting and gives me a lot of focus. And every day I wake up, I'm very excited to wake up. And if I didn't do that, I could see how that can become a problem, and I would start giving up and literally stop exercising and doing all these other things that support it. Number 2 is retreat. He or she has experienced results that were not fruitful, or that he or she did not perceive as fruitful, and has therefore decided to avoid taking further actions that might prompt this to occur again. Like the do-nothings, retreaters justify their responses and believe it is in their best interest to remain operating at their current level. Again, everybody has a choice, and everybody has a right to live the life that they want to live. If, at a certain point you feel tired and you just don't want to chase the dreams anymore, then that's fine. But I don't really make these videos for people like that. Those of you that watch my videos and read these kind of books demand to become the best at what you do and raise the bar and raise the standard for the quality of value that you provide for your marketplace. And I say that because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that watch my video. Most are entrepreneurs or are very driven in their careers and are creating more value in their careers and marketplace. So they can create a good life for themselves, but they find a lot of joy in creating joy for others. Okay, so if that's the case, then retreating is not an option. Okay, we don't want to retreat. And you know what? Times can get hard. Okay, this is not a smooth journey from beginning all the way till the end. Okay, till you hit, billionaire status or whatever it is you're looking for. It's not a smooth journey. Okay, that's why a lot of people don't make it to high levels of success in their chosen area, whatever area of choice. Eventually, they get to a point where something throws them off guard, and then they do nothing or they retreat. And, they can choose to leave, and as long as they accept it, that's fine, because then it won't stress them out. But if you don't accept it and you realize that you're retreating, then you're creating some cognitive dissonance. And for those that are high-level achievers, when they hit a roadblock, we need to be aware. If you're like that, you need to be aware of when you are retreating and how that's not actually helping you move you forward towards your goals. It's actually setting you back. You need to get back into taking action. So number 3, taking normal levels of action, which again is not bad, right? At least you're taking action. People in this group spend their lives taking enough action to appear average and create normal lives, marriages and careers. However, they never do quite enough to create real success. So producing a high level of success in whatever area of your choice, whether it's career, business, relationships, marriage, family life, takes more effort, takes more discipline, it takes sacrifice. And by sacrifice, I'm talking about not doing things that are going to waste your time, that are going to deteriorate your brain, that's going to pollute your body and your mind and things like that. You know, we don't have to be perfect, but we have to realize that there's cause and effect. Okay, this is logical. There's cause and effect for every behavior and action we take. And thus, the more optimal actions we take, the higher the likelihood, because there's no guarantees in life, but the higher the likelihood that you're going to produce the results. Now, that being said, if you take the same level of action as everybody else around you who has a certain level of success that to you is not desirable, the statistical probability that you're going to get those results is going to be pretty high. You're going to get the same results. But if you're around people that are taking the next level, which is massive action, they're probably going to make you feel uncomfortable, okay? When you're around people that take massive action and they're doing big things, they're putting themselves out there, you're going to get a kind of a weird feeling around them if you're not a massive action taker yourself. Okay, you're going to, because it's all about energy if you think about it. Someone who's operating at a massive action taking level has a very driven, motivated, focused, disciplined energy, and it can be very jarring to the sense of somebody who just kind of wants to take the normal action and not really produce the results. And again, it's a personal choice, but it's going to feel kind of weird. However, if you take normal levels of action, you're going to get the normal level of results like everybody else. But what we really want to do is we want to focus on taking massive action. Number 4, massive action is actually the level of action that creates new problems. And until you create problems, you're not truly operating at the 4th stage of action. So think about this for a moment. And I'm not saying that you do this, but this is a bold action. To quit your job and start a business, okay? Just quitting your job and starting a business with no business experience or very little business experience is something that is very jarring to the senses for a lot of people. Now, I quit my job. I worked 10 years in corporate in 2009 and started my IT business. I had business training and certain experience in entrepreneurial drive and stuff like that. But believe me, when I quit my job, it created more problems. Now, this doesn't mean it was a bad thing. It created problems, which then I learned how to solve. Okay? And as an entrepreneur, you are a problem solver. You become good at solving problems. And the better of an entrepreneur you are, the faster and more efficient you solve these problems. So that being said, when you take massive action in the direction that you choose, chances are it's going to create more problems. And most people retreat after they see those problems that show up. But those problems are actually opportunities. Those problems are going to train you and educate you on the most valuable lesson in life. It's called experience. Okay, you're going to get experience. And you cannot learn that from a book. You cannot learn that from watching a YouTube video. You can't learn that from a lecture or a mentor talking to you. You can only learn that from being in the arena, okay, actually doing it, experiencing those problems. And you will experience how to maintain presence of mind, as I mentioned this earlier from 33 Strategies of War. You will also learn how to solve those problems. And the more you can do that, the more excited and motivated you become, the more your core confidence goes up. And this becomes an ongoing, exciting journey. It feeds off each other. In fact, I find that when people get a certain level of success and they slow down, they actually become kind of depressed. They actually start to feel unmotivated, and they kind of feel like their life is meaningless and doesn't have the purpose. And I've experienced this myself in certain areas where I've slowed down, and I made a commitment to myself that I was never going to let that happen again. I'm going to keep raising the bar and achieving higher levels. Why? Because that is the sweet spot. Okay, that's where you engage your brain and the additional capacity and all the physiological things that happens in your brain from solving problems and the different, I don't know, I'm not a brain expert, but all whatever it is that you built internally, the neural pathways and so forth, if they're not being used, they're going to die off and it's going to feel kind of uncomfortable. So if the momentum is to keep building and adding more complexity, not to stress yourself out, but to be able to manage and rise up and solve problems in that complexity, that's the momentum you've built for many years, then it absolutely makes sense to keep that momentum going. Very important. And if you don't have that momentum, it's important to start that momentum. I talk about how, personally, I don't come from a background where I did really well in school. But I'll tell you what, when I left school, I started cracking down on the business books. I went and learned from mentors, and I started learning different complex technologies when I was in corporate, because I was in the IT department. And I never stopped learning, and I just kept learning and learning and learning. Now, every day, arguably most of my time is spent working and learning. Very small percentage of my time is in rejuvenation. I do enough rejuvenation, and I have fun too, and stuff like that. But I actually have a really, really big desire, a genuine desire to learn and to be constantly solving problems. That's where I get a lot of my excitement. I think my brain has just kind of wired itself like that just through the repetition. So if you don't have that right now, just from my own personal experience, and this might be an isolated case, but I also have talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs about the same subject. Once you get on this journey and you take massive action and you do it for a few years, a decade, 2 decades, it just becomes automatic and it just becomes an exciting way to be. Taking massive action means making somewhat unreasonable choices and then following these up with even more action. Okay, so, quitting a job can be seen to a lot of people as unreasonable. However, when you quit your job and you come up with all these problems and you solve the problems, guess what happens? You start producing income. Your business starts to grow. Then what happens? Well, you raise the bar and you take more massive action, and then you create more problems. Maybe you get into a new marketplace. Maybe you get a new revenue source. Maybe you start another business. Maybe you do hire some people. Now you've got more complexity because you have to learn how to manage people. You have to learn leadership. And by the way, if you want to learn leadership, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership is a great book. I did a video on that, and I put a link in the description. You're going to get more of this kind of complexity. This level of action will be considered to be some as borderline even insane. They were like, why do you keep, raising the bar up? Why do you keep pushing? Again, it's undescribable, the feeling that you can get when you take a bold massive action that creates more problems, and then you have to solve those problems real time. Okay, there's something that happens in the brain. I can't really explain it. I don't know the science behind it, but it's very exciting and engaging. Okay, and that's what I believe. Like I watched a number of videos of Grant Cardone, and I really enjoy his stuff because I believe that he lives this philosophy. I just kind of see it. He just does everything really big, and it's very, admirable, very exciting, and I can see how he inspires a lot of people. But that's really what this is about. Okay, so when you do that, others are going to see it as insane. It's not going to be socially normal. It's going to create more problems. But remember, if you don't create new problems, then you're not taking enough action. You're definitely not in the massive action section. So that's very important because 10x, when you set the goals really high to achieve them, you have to take massive action. And brings us to our next point, going all in. Remember, there are no shortages of how many times you can get up and continue. There is no failure unless you quit. It is impossible for you to use up all your energy or creativity. It is impossible for you to run out of ideas. The only times this happens is once you have looked for the rationale to say that this is not true. Once you have convinced yourself that, hey, you know what? There is this limitation where I only have a certain amount of energy, I only have a certain amount of creativity, and I will run out of ideas. The moment you've convinced yourself, you shut off the possibility of you generating that one breakthrough idea. And a lot of times, it depends on what it is. All it takes is that one breakthrough idea. What you'll find in business is that, at least from my personal experience, you have to try a lot of things, and you have to try a lot of variations of those things, a lot of those things. And a handful of those things will work really well. maybe like one or two of those things will work so well and just kind of explode. But if you never took all those actions, if you never tried all those things, you wouldn't have found that one thing. And the key is to recognize that we usually underestimate how many things we have to try. Okay? We usually underestimate, including myself, how many things we have to try to produce the results. And if you sit down, as you watch this video, I'm sure that if you just dedicate 30 minutes to an hour of brainstorming different ways of solving the problem that you have in your business right now, you're going to come up with actions and ideas, more of them that you could possibly take action on, which would keep you busy for months and years as an attempt to solve the problem. And probably one of those will solve the problem. But never get to the point where you say, I can't do it. The truth is that there's always a way. Okay, now there's always a way to do it. There's some areas, I'm not going to be delusional here, that it redefines what's possible as far as with the resources you have and the limitations and capability. But there's far more that you can do to produce whatever the outcome is, whether it's like creating wealth or whatever, that is within your capability that most likely you're overlooking, and to focus on that and to not shut yourself off to the possibility of that being true. I find that the greater the commitment I make to a client, the higher level of delivery naturally becomes. It is as though I am promising to both them and myself to reach new levels of what I'm able to do for them. The more energy I devote to the markets, my clients, or my family, the more intent I am upon delivering exactly what I said I was going to. Okay, so pick the areas of your life that are important to you. The truth is that you can't do everything. I like the strategy of picking a handful of things that are really important to me and dedicating all my time to moving towards the high-level 10x goals in those areas. And then usually those areas tend to feed off each other. Health and fitness, for example, tends to feed on your business. Like your success in business obviously gives you more wealth, so you can enjoy better quality foods and afford the gym membership and personal training or whatever. And on the flip side, taking care of your health and fitness will give you more energy to perform your business tasks. And then focusing on another important area for me is communication skills. Working on communication skills helps me improve my business skills. And there's certain fundamental skills, whatever they are for you, it's important to identify them and go all in. So the key word here is obsession. Okay, and the dictionary defines the term obsession as the domination of one's thoughts or feelings by a persistent idea, image, or desire. Although the rest of the world tends to treat this mindset like a disease, I believe that it's a perfect adjective for how you must approach success. To dominate your sector, your goal, your dream, or ambition, you must first dominate your every interest, thought, and consideration. Obsession is not a bad thing here. It is a requirement to get where you want to go. Now, this is again provided that you want to achieve 10x results. And if you haven't read Relentless, okay, that's a great book. I did a video on it, put a link in the description. He talks about how he trains Tim Grover, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. Okay, these are the best and the best in the world, and training them, they get a different kind of training compared to everybody else. Okay, and in their training, it's all about obsessiveness, what others would consider obsession to be a bad thing. But you got to look at, there's so much competition. And we talked about earlier, not focusing on the competition, but being aware, not being delusional. The competition does exist. However, if you want to rise above the competition, then you must be so masterful in your craft. And I'm going to do a video on Robert Greene's Mastery. That's a book about getting mastery. Whatever area you choose in your life, getting that mastery, dedicating towards becoming a master in that craft. Eventually the competition can't even catch up to you. Good movie to watch is Hiro Dreams of Sushi. I'll put a link to the trailer. There's a guy who has dedicated his life towards mastering the art and process of sushi. Okay, out of all things, that's what he chose to do. And every day he's making incremental improvements. The Japanese Kaizen, incremental improvements every day. There's always a incremental improvement you can make to what you're doing right now. But in order to have the desire to look for that incremental improvement, we must be obsessed with the craft, the area of choice that we want mastery in. Children are a wonderful example of inherent obsession. They're almost instantly fixated with any task they encounter, learning, mimicking, discovering, playing, and utilizing their full energy for whatever captures their interest. We see this with children. They have a toy, they have a video game, and if it might be a behavior that might not be beneficial for them, we tell them, hey, don't do that. What we fail to do a lot of times is encourage the focus. Now, the behavior might not be a good thing, but that focus that they have, that engagement, somehow with time, we don't put a lot of emphasis on that when they're children, and they lose that. And then eventually you start to realize that it's an important success quality, to be so immersed in what you're doing that nothing else matters. Okay, so immersed, so focused, that world could be falling apart around you, and all you're doing is focusing on your craft. That's like how a child would behave. That's an inherent natural quality. Now, the good news is we inherently have that, and we can tap into that. That's what going all in is all about. And that's required if you want to 10x. Next, let's talk about fear. Fear is one of those important emotions that come up during the journey of 10xing. Okay, when you raise the goal really high, you can feel the fear of rejection, fear of public speaking, fear of sales, whatever's required, fear of marketing and putting yourself out there, fear of what other people will think of you. Fears are going to come up, and we have to learn how to work with it. Sooner or later, you will experience fear when you're starting to take new actions at new levels. In fact, if you aren't, then you're probably not doing enough for the right things, or enough of the right things. Fear isn't bad or something to avoid. Conversely, it's something you want to seek and embrace. Fear is actually a sign that you're doing what's needed to move in the right direction. An absence of concerns signals that you are only doing what's comfortable for you, and that will only get you more of what you have right now. Remember, we have this fear mechanism that is designed to calibrate us to homeostasis, kind of status quo. Why? Because what we're doing right now, everything you're doing right now, you're alive today. Okay? You've survived. And your brain thinks, okay, so I've done all these things that I'm doing right now, and it's keeping me alive, and that's good. But if I change it, if I do this fearful thing, then there's a risk of all these other things happening, so then we feel the emotion. However, the only way to get a different result is to do some things that are different, cause and effect. So when you 10x and you raise the goals really high, the fears really come up. But we have to work through the fear. A good video I found is Bob Proctor talks about the terror barrier, the great model for overcoming fear. I'm going to put a link in the description for that. I found that to be really helpful. Watch the video over and over and over again, because here's the thing. When you encounter fear, that is precisely the moment where you need to have rationale, the recognition that you are experiencing fear, and then you need to go through it anyways. If it's constructive, you feel the fear and do it anyways. And if you can repeatedly have some kind of programming or process in place, even have somebody with you, an accountability partner, will help you walk through the fear while you're experiencing, while you're kind of crippled and stunned, you're going to eventually rewire that process, and that whatever that is that you're doing will become something that doesn't have as much fear associated with it. And that's why I recommend this audio on a video. I'll put the link in the description. Fear doesn't tell you what to do. Fear doesn't just tell you what to do. It also tells you when to do it. Ask yourself what time it is at any point of day, and the answer is always the same: now. The time is now, and when you experience fear, it's a sign that the best time to take action is at the very moment. Something interesting happens, and I've experimented with this for many years. Something interesting happens when you continuously take action in the face of fear. And then after you do the fearful act, the constructive fearful act, and you feel that joy, something happens that's very interesting. You start to now associate doing things despite of fear as a great sense of joy, excitement, and pleasure. And you find yourself doing more fearful things that are constructive. This is true if you look at those that do extreme sports. They're willing to risk their lives and do all these. I watched a video the other day of this this guy surfing this massive wave. He actually fell and broke his back. The wave like crushed his back. And I was thinking like, how does a person get motivated to do something like that when the statistical probability of injury is so high, but yet they're so excited? And I remember him saying that he wants to go back and do it again. He's like, that's like, how does that happen? I think that happens through repetition of raising the bar in fear. Now, there's constructive and I'm not going to argue and say that wasn't a positive thing, to each their own. But when it comes to success qualities that we need to do, success actions that we need to take to produce the 10x result, when we experience fear, we can rewrite the meaning of the fear and actually generate excitement. And this is done through repetition. Okay, the only thing that will make the difference is action. Everyone has had the experience of failing to do something they always wanted to do. Now, the difference is the meaning we associate to that failing. A lot of people have associated giving up and not trying again to failing, and they have made that association permanent. And they have created all kinds of rationale and logic to explain and justify why they can't do it. Complex rationale and explanation. You, on the other hand, now realize, you've already probably always realized this, that you cannot accept those stories. And the key is to continuously do things that you're afraid of doing that are constructive, that move you towards your worthy ideal. So when you fail, it's better to have a excitement feeling right afterwards, which you can generate, right? What you do is, after you fail, you look at it and say, now I've got these additional problems, but I've got insightful data. Why did I fail? What if I switch it? What if I change things around? What if I do it a different way? Now you get excited, and that excitement is real excitement. It's not fake excitement, it's real excitement, because now you're getting more objective data and you're excited about the realism and the objective data. And based on it, you're going to move forward. Okay, which brings us to our next point, excuses. Excuses are never the reason for why you did or didn't do something. They're just a revision of the facts that you make up in order to help yourself feel better about what happened. Okay, so essentially, the truth is that you can do these things. A lot, like I say this about myself too, because there's a lot of things that I know I should be doing, but I'm not doing it. And, I stopped telling people about it. I just made peace with myself and said, look, I'm just not doing it. And anything I say is an excuse. Okay, I'm just going to make up excuses. There's no point in me sharing that excuse. However, what I will do is ask myself, what are the priorities? I got 24 hours in a day. What are the areas that I want to focus on to move the objective forward, to move the needle of progress forward on the areas of my life that are important? And there's things that I can't do, which I need to do. Perhaps I'll do it later. Perhaps I'll do it at another time. But I will not say that I can't do it or make up some excuse. There's a difference. Objectively and critically saying that I'm not going to prioritize this right now, but I'm going to do something else that's going to move the needle forward is not an excuse. That is a proper, reasonable allocation of time, energy, opportunity cost. However, to not do the thing and then do something that is an alternative that actually sets you further back, that would be considered an excuse. So evaluate and recognize where you're making excuses, and then say to yourself, well, it's okay that I'm making excuses because you were kind of like programmed to do this, but over the course of this journey towards producing the results, I'm going to look at how I can actually do the thing, whether it not be now, but later on, and I'm going to measure myself. So one of the important things of setting 10x goals or goals in general is to measure your progress. So if it's fitness, what are the key performance indicators? Is it your body fat percentage? Is it your weight? Is it whatever, your strengths in the gym? If it's business, is it the amount of leads you generate? That's a key, important key performance indicator. What are the conversion metrics? A lot of people, they have businesses, but they don't have key performance indicators. They don't know what the conversion numbers are on the front end, back end. It's too stressful for them. And I think one of the reasons why is because they don't realize the importance of how pragmatic and how valuable that insightful data is, and how it actually confronts you when you're making an excuse. once you get that information, then what's going to happen is it's going to tell you right then and there what's the most important things you should be doing in your business and what are the areas you need to focus on. And then you really got to ask yourself why you're not doing those things. That will really help you determine what is an excuse and what is valid. Because I could talk a lot about excuses, but recognize it's important to have metrics, numbers, data to analyze your behaviors, analyze your business and how it performs, and do things that moves it forward towards the predetermined objective that you laid out, whether it's 10% growth, 20% growth, whatever it is. Make sure that what you're doing is objectively moving you forward towards that. And granted, there's 100,000 different things that could probably add another 10 or 20% of growth to your business per year, but you only have a certain amount of time, energy, resources, or the capability to work with current resources right now, or you just have other priorities, and you choose not to do that other thing that's going to add another 10%, that's fine. You've made peace with it. But if you're not moving forward, those numbers aren't moving up, then you're probably making excuses. Time management. This is a very important thing because you only get 24 hours in a day. Okay, you get a certain amount of time that you spend sleeping, a certain amount of time you spend, grooming, taking care of yourself, exercising, eating, and so forth. And then you get time to rejuvenate yourself, entertain yourself, keep yourself in a joyous spirit, and so forth. Happiness, fun, and stuff like that. And you got time to work. You got time to be productive and produce results in your business. And what you do in that time is so important because that's going to determine the results you have. And that's determined by how you leverage the resources that you have, the money resources, the people resources, yourself. Focus on the concept of highest and best use. Look at what's your highest and best use. I've learned that from Jay Abraham. And it's a question that I ask myself with everything I do. What is the best use of my time? While I'm not perfect at it, I get better every day. I ask myself, this thing that I'm doing right now, does it have the most reach? Does it have the most impact? Does it have the most drive towards my end result? If it doesn't, why am I doing it? Right? Certain things have been totally eliminated out of my day-to-day processes or routines or my business activities, especially gossip and useless meetings. I don't do that anymore. So if you only get a certain amount of productive time, you really have to value that time. And here are some points that I pulled from the book. I'm going to add my 2 cents. The first thing you must do is make success your duty by setting distinct and definitive priorities. And you're setting priorities using a task management software like Trello. That's the one I use. All my tasks in there and are broken down by main task, project, subtasks, etc. I can't do this for you, of course. Everyone's priorities are different. Okay, and this is where you get real. Now, if your priorities are not 10xing and producing results, it's going to be very apparent by the activities that you choose every day. Okay, and cognitive dissonance is saying you want to do something and produce results, but not taking the necessary actions. Okay, that's what happens. You're just going to create more stress and friction within. If you're not doing the things, you need to ask yourself why not. You need to seek some counsel. You need to resolve that. There's many different ways of resolving it, but if you don't resolve it, it's not going to move the objective forward. Those numbers, those key performance indicators, those metrics that we're trying to move forward towards our goal, because we set quantifiable goals, we don't just set abstract goals, are not going to move forward if you're not prioritizing your time, energy, and resources. Okay, so that's very, very, very important. So if success is a main concern for you, then I suggest that you spend most of your time doing things that will create the success. And I mentioned this earlier, the way I do this is I focus on what are the important areas of my life, and I divvy up my time every day towards those areas and growth in those areas. Understanding that I can't conquer everything, I can't win at everything, and as I progress and as I evolve in life, my capacity to handle more increases, but it's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay with me. I'm going to focus on the areas that I have a genuine passion and desire and the most fulfillment in growing, and that's that. And they have to feed off each other. And I mentioned the correlation between health and fitness and business and communication. What are those areas for you? Identify what they are. Pick the friendships, relationships, business partnerships, associations, activities, entertainment, study notes, books, whatever, that have the greatest probable impact on you producing results and that feed off each other, so that it produces multiple results in multiple areas of your life. Okay, being around people that share, they might not do the exact same thing you're doing, But if they support you, they uplift you, they motivate you, and they keep you accountable, and you grow together, that can be really powerful. You have to decide how you're going to use your time. You must command, control, and squeeze every second out of it in order to increase your footprint and dominate your marketplace. Get everyone necessary, your family, your colleagues, associates, employees, to recognize and agree upon which priorities are most important. If you're working with a team, okay, your family, your colleagues, your friends, your associates, your employees, for all intents and purposes, when you're 10xing, you're setting the bar really high. You need to have the support and the team and the buy-in, and they have to understand what your boundaries are. Okay, if you cannot have people in your life that overstep the boundaries, and you're too timid and shy to tell them that and address it, and just let them eat away at your time, because then you're going to grow resentful towards them, and that's very disrespectful because you only have yourself to blame. Remember, we talked about taking responsibility. So set boundaries, set criteria, and don't allow your boundaries to be violated. Stand up for yourself, don't be bullied, have respect for yourself. When you do that, you're more authentically able to respect others, and others will respect you because you do that. If you don't do this, you'll have people with different agendas pulling you in all sorts of different directions, and then you'll just end up blaming people for your problems. How long you are spending your time, log how you are spending your time every day. So one of the softwares that I use that I got on my phone, it's called Hours Tracker, and I track my time. I know how long it takes me to do my morning routine. I know how much time I want to dedicate towards work every day. I know how much time I want to dedicate to my projects. I use block time. I block time in my calendar. I block off time for leisure. I know where my time is going, and this has been so helpful for me. Okay, because think about this for the moment. Let's say you are making $10,000 a month in your business, but you're working 100 hours a week. Well, you're working 100 hours a week, meaning 10,000 a month, which is a six-figure business. That's fine. That's good. But what if you can optimize your time and create that $10,000 a month by working 30 hours a week, or 20 hours a week, or 10 hours a week? Well, everyone would love to do that. And the best way that I found to do this and keep getting better at it is to track where your time is going. Because then you're going to find the areas where it's not producing any results or not moving the needle forward. You're going to eliminate those areas. You're going to find some different areas that you can hire somebody to do, or get a piece of software to automate. Or you're going to find some alternative ways of generating that income, even in the existing market, that can replace what you're doing, which essentially eats up more time. But it starts by looking at where your time is going. If you do that, then you're going to live, you're going to have a choice, first of all, because let's say you're making $10,000 a month and you're working 30 hours a week, but before you were working 100 hours a week, making $10,000 a month, now you've optimized down to 30. You have more capacity to do things that you enjoy doing, educate yourself, have fun, whatever. But you also, by choice, can dedicate an extra 10, 20 hours to up that 10,000 to 15,000 or 20,000. And so forth, and you can keep growing. You can look at investment vehicles, and you can leverage money, and there's all kinds of ways of doing it. But one of the things that I find is that there's people that, for example, charge high fees for their time. They might charge like, $500 or $1,000 an hour for consulting or different kinds of things, but they don't make a lot of money at the end of the year, and they're always like, strapped for cash. And I always wonder, like, what's going on? And when you start to analyze it, you start to realize that they might charge $500 or $1,000 for consulting an hour, but it actually takes them like 3 or 4 hours to prepare for that $500 an hour consult, and now that time invested is essentially bringing them down to $100 an hour. But they don't even realize this, and they don't know how to systematically and strategically and scalably price their services and their products because they're not tracking their time. It's very important to get on that. So criticism, right? Now, when we're talking about setting 10x goals and essentially, setting these lofty goals, if you're not surrounded by people that think that way, you're probably going to be met with criticism. You tell people that, hey, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to start a side business, and my goal is to make, $5,000 to $10,000 passive income from my business through optimization and pragmatic, and not even being delusional, but by leveraging the different kinds of opportunities and ways of doing things. Like a lot of people are already doing it, but just doing what they're doing. It's very real. It's not It's not like delusional. People are actually doing this. But maybe it's people around you who don't know what the possibilities are and how it can be done might look at you and say, that's just a pipe dream. You're going to receive all kinds of criticism. So I got some ways of handling this. So number one is, you don't need to tell people about what you're going to do. Real confidence is to win through your actions, not through arguments. You don't need to share things unless it's going to move the objective forward with your business partner or whoever that is actually going to support you. A lot of times when you come from an environment where you don't have a lot of support and you set lofty goals and you want to tell people, I don't think that they're trying to be evil. I mean, some people genuinely don't really want to see people around them succeed, but a lot of times it kind of makes them feel uncomfortable. So when you tell them that you've got this high level goal, they're going to start reevaluating their life, and they're like, I don't set my goals this high and so forth. And they might throw some criticism at you, and they might not even, a lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. When you ask business advice from people that don't want to talk about, or fitness advice, and they don't have the results, they're going to give you some kind of advice or criticism, and it's going to be it's not going to make any sense because they just don't have the experience. But a lot of times people just like to share and talk about and make it seem like they know things because they just don't want to look stupid or whatever. But the point is, you're going to get criticism, and you're going to get criticism all throughout your journey. Okay, receiving criticism is a surefire sign that you are well on your way. Criticism is not something that you want to avoid. Rather, it's what you must expect to come your way once you start hitting it big. Again, you can avoid it from the obvious areas, but recognize that you're not this island where nobody can find you. If you're doing business, you're dealing with clients, vendors, competitors, whatever, you're going to get criticism. And how you respond to the criticism is going to be valuable for you and your growth. And this is the best way to do it. The best way that I found is when you get criticism, strip away the emotion. Detach from the emotion of the criticism. Sometimes people give criticism very constructively. Sometimes they just throw all kinds of negative emotions and stuff in there, and they vent in between the criticism. All criticism is valid. Look at what they're trying to say. Look at the depths of what they're criticizing you on, and see if what they're asking for or what they're saying is actually valid. They might not know the whole story of how your business operates, and they give you criticism, and thus their criticism is not really valid, or some degree of it is valid. Or they might offer you a very interesting perspective because they're your clients, they're your prospects, and so forth, which if you didn't pay attention to the truth and the real meaning behind the criticism, and you're just so overwhelmed by the emotion by it, you wouldn't get that benefit. So start developing that ability. And eventually when you have that ability, you're going to look forward towards criticism. And I'm not saying that you need to be around people that are just downright disrespectful. What I'm saying is that you're going to get a lot of criticism, and we need to come up with a certain way of dealing with criticism. And this is actually a great exercise of self-confidence. To develop self-confidence means that you place yourself in situations where you can be criticized, rejected, but it doesn't throw off your sense of self, your identity. A good book to read is The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. I did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description. Develop your self-esteem by placing yourself in situations where there is a high probability that you would be criticized. But remember that you can find validity in the criticism, all criticism, and it's your choice what you want to do with it. Keep pouring on to the success, and sooner or later, the very same people who are putting you down will be admiring you for what you've done. Those who initially judge your actions will later be singing your praises, just as long as you take the criticism as a sign of your growing success and keep the accelerator on your 10x actions, or your actions at 10x. After all, what better way to retaliating against criticism than to keep succeeding? So, this may or may not happen, right? Some people are just looking to see if you're for real. You say, okay, I'm going to quit, I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to do this other thing. Now everyone's looking at you and they're criticizing you because they, maybe your past track record is you never had the discipline, or you never really accomplished anything, so they don't really believe it. So you go and accomplish it, you produce the results. They may come around and be like, you know what, I made a mistake, you're doing the right thing. Or they may not. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you have only yourself to answer to. And you're definitely going to answer yourself if you didn't take the action and you let criticism hold you back. So don't do it for the validation. Do it because this is a way of living. This is about your success, your growth, your commitment to yourself. And if it's your business and it's your commitment to your marketplace, you have a genuine desire to create value for the marketplace, it's something to be, and that's very admirable. It's not something to take lightly. It's a responsibility, and you need to remove yourself from any egotistical. A good book to read is The Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. I did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description. Remove yourself from any type of egotistical need for validation or approval from others. If you get it, thank people for it, but really see it as objective data of, is it allowing you to multiply your value, or is it diminishing it by causing you to drift and focus on egotistical things? So these are 32 characteristics, success characteristics. We're going to fly through these. I'm not going to get into them in detail. Recommend you read the book because there's a whole section where he talks about these elements. So number 1 is have a can-do attitude. We've talked about this. Number 2, believe that I will figure it out. Why? Because it recalibrates the brain to look for opportunities, for solving problems. If you want to be a problem solver, which is an entrepreneur is a problem solver, in my opinion. Okay, solves problems in exchange for value. Okay, value could be money, it could be cryptocurrency, it could be barter. Value is value. Don't just think of money, but an entrepreneur, in my opinion, is somebody that creates solutions to problems and offers it in exchange for value, and takes the value and reinvests it back into creating more solutions for problems, because that's who they are. They enjoy doing it. It's a passion, it's an excitement, it's very rewarding, it's very fulfilling, yes, and you can create a lot of wealth for yourself. But it starts with the attitude of you can figure it out. Okay, focus on opportunity, love challenges, become genuinely interested in looking for challenges. If you actually do, we talked about this earlier, take a massive action is going to create more problems, which is more challenges. And then if you love the challenges, you're going to get stimulated by it. Seek to solve problems, persist until successful. Okay, persistence is one of the most important elements in this realm. Okay, the realm of success, the realm of entrepreneurship. Persistence. Consistency and persistency. One of my favorite sayings. Be consistent. Every day you got to wake up. Every day you got to go at it. A lot of times it's not glamorous at all. But what's exciting is, in my opinion, it's exciting to me, and a lot of entrepreneurs that I connect with share this excitement, is the daily exercise of building persistence, of building willpower. A lot of people don't like that. They're like, I don't, willpower, persistence, that doesn't sound like fun. I absolutely have fun, okay? And I have fun growing and creating more time for myself so I can do all kinds of fun things like travel or whatnot. I wouldn't be able to do that if I'm not persistent and consistent on the revenue generating activities that are required, and the passion and desire to develop the persistence. Because one thing about me is I travel while running my business. I can go to anywhere in this world. I've stayed in like party destinations, Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I've stayed there right in the central area where there's like busloads of tourists being dropped off and they're all partying and whatnot. And I can sit there in a cafe, or I can stop working at a certain time like clockwork and switch between having fun and excitement, party mode, versus time to get down to work and get this stuff done mode. Okay, like binary, on and off. You can do that. And you can develop that ability to do it, because a lot of people ask me, they say, well, how do you stay disciplined when you work from home and work in all these places? And I said it wasn't easy. I wasn't a very disciplined person to begin with, but I developed discipline and persistence as like a muscle. Take risks, be unreasonable in a way to create 10x. And a book that I'm going to do, and I recommend you read, is called U Squared. Okay, so I love The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and I love the Kaizen method for improvement. And I also like to diversify the strategy by including some fanatical action taking, okay, radical action taking, being unreasonable, making bold moves. Why? Because you create more problems, and those problems are opportunities. Okay, be dangerous. A lot of times we are taught to play it safe. Okay? It's okay to get hurt. It's okay to lose a bit of money. You do things in business. You make mistakes. Take a risk. Take action. Buy whatever it is that you need to buy that will move you forward. If it sets you back a little bit, make the big investments. I've talked to people who have invested large sums of money in certain kinds of training programs and mentorship and stuff like that, and it was like their last dollar, and it turned out that they grew so much, and because they took that risk, because they had that do or die kind of, placing themselves on death ground, which again is another 33 strategies of war, strategy, they had the motivation and drive to actually make it work. Okay, now this all depends on risk tolerance, but that's something to keep in consideration. Create real wealth for yourself. When you do this, whatever you do, when you 10x, if you're creating value for others, you're going to get that reciprocated back through value, money, which you can reinvest back into creating more, and you can also take good care of yourself and your family and so forth. Readily take action. Always say yes. So this is especially important in the beginning. He talks about in the beginning, when you don't have a lot of opportunities, and you don't have a huge network, you're probably going to need to say yes to a lot of things. Okay, you need to build the skills, you need to build the experience, you need to build the expertise, the portfolio, the case studies, and things like that. And you need to look at all the opportunities that you can say yes to right now. Then when you get to a later stage, when there's like floodgates of opportunity open up because you've created a lot of success. The more success you create, the more opportunities show up. It's just the way it is. Sun Tzu said this in The Art of War. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. Okay, so that doesn't mean just you take the opportunity and you just do like a bunch of random stuff, but you actually take the opportunity, you produce results with the opportunity, you will get more opportunities. That's how it is. That's the exciting part of this journey. Then you can start saying no to things, okay? Because then you can really choose what's as you grow in your business, certain activities that would produce, let's say, $1,000 are not as valuable now because a lot of activities that you do are producing $10,000. So why would you take $1,000 opportunity? So stuff like that. Habitually commit. Okay? Habitually commit. Go all the way. Focus on now. Demonstrate courage. Embrace change. Determine and take the right approach. Okay? Critical thinking. Evaluating. Break traditional ideas. The cool thing about entrepreneurship and business is that you recognize that it is the arena of breaking tradition. That's what it's about. When you get into corporate and you get all this other stuff, like there's formulas, there's systems, I get it. It's important to have formulas and systems and so forth. But there's a lot of things that come as a result of breaking traditions. Look at services like Uber, Airbnb, example. They broke traditional ways of doing business. And there's far more opportunity to break traditional ways of doing things. But breaking tradition is a mindset also. It's a mindset. A person that breaks tradition often, not for random reasons, but because they realize the value behind it, because it creates more opportunities. Yeah, it creates more problems, but it also creates a lot of solutions to problems. A person that does that is oriented to think differently. They don't think like everyone else. And a good entrepreneur sees solutions to problems that are different than other entrepreneurs, and they can market their solutions and thus capture market share or offer a alternative to what's existing in the marketplace right now, or a different way of serving that alternative. Be goal-oriented, be on a mission, have a high level of motivation. So whatever it takes to get that motivation going, whether it's cutting out any kind of information that you're consuming. It's important to get ruthless with this. I recommend it. Any kind of information that's disempowering, people that are disempowering you, and surround yourself with information that inspires you, instructs you, uplifts you, and makes you feel like you can do it. A lot of people that I know, including myself, listen to the same motivational audio over and over again. I listened to Stranger's Secret, and I've been listening to it over and over again since 2007, since I discovered it. Over and over again. It's the same audio. It's the same words, but it's the repetition that programs the subconscious mind. I did a video on the power of the subconscious mind. If you program your subconscious mind to be default motivated all the time, it's going to be a lot easier to pull that motivation out of you. Be interested in results. Focus on what is right rather than who is right. Focus on what is right and producing results. Don't get caught up in gossip or worrying too much about what other people are doing. Produce results and win through your actions, not your arguments. Have big goals and dreams. Create your own reality. Okay, create your own reality. You know that our reality, how we believe reality to work, a large part of it is what our parents and what everyone else told us of how it should be. While it's important to keep the laws in consideration, we don't do anything that's going to get us in trouble, there's a lot of belief systems and ideologies that other people have taught us about that aren't necessarily going to serve you in the realm of creating 10x success, entrepreneurial success. So I'm going to put a link in the description for a long audio. It's about 5 or 6 hours, called Reality Transurfing. It's a metaphysical model of looking at reality. I found it to be really, really powerful. I'll put a link in the description. I recommend you commit the time to. It's just an audio with it's actually a book. So listen to it. It's been really impactful. One of the most powerful books I've read, actually. Commit first, figure out later. Be highly ethical. Very important. Cause and effect. For every action you take, there's an effect. Ethics is so important. It's good to be driven. It's good to be motivated. It's good to chase success, create a lot of wealth for yourself, but always do it in an ethical way, because then you don't burn the bridges with the wrong people. You don't end up in trouble. I did the last video I did was The Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort, and it's a straight line selling persuasion system. Great book, a great selling system. Put a link in the description to that video. He learned how to sell, and he teaches how to sell, and he's very masterful at it. And he says blatantly and bluntly in the book, you could use this towards ethical reasons or unethical reasons. It's still going to work, and it's what landed him in jail, the very selling system. But he even said that, look, if he did it ethically, he would have been a lot more successful, because there's far more opportunity when you do things ethically. And it's good peace of mind. You don't want to be stressed out. You don't always want to be on edge and worrying about people coming to get you and different kinds of things like that. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. Do things the right way. Be ethical. Be interested in the group. Okay? That's, feeds it to be ethical. Genuinely caring about your vendors, your people, your clients, your employees, people that are associated with you, those that you're contributing to help get success. Be respectful. Be dedicated to continuous learning, okay, forever. And why wouldn't you want to? Because, look, if you continue to stimulate the brain, it can help with a lot of, potential issues with the brain that might arise at a later stage in life if you're not committed to learning. They've done studies that those that retire, right after they retire, they start to diminish in their mental capacity, and they actually start to die faster and stuff like that. It's just it's just obvious that the brain is stimulated by continuous learning. Don't just learn, look at better ways to learn also. I did a whole program. If you want to check out my website, link in the description, my mind mapping course, because I'm really big on accelerated learning, okay, the kind of learning that you can maximize your internal understandings, comprehension, ability to grasp complexity, all these different kinds of things, which is very important in today's world, because if you can take this large volume of information that's available freely on the internet, on YouTube, everywhere else, it's just available, it's right there. You can work with it in a faster way and produce some real value in the marketplace, and you can make some good money, and you can make it relatively quick. It's not get rich quick in a unethical way, but you can create real value for people really fast with the tools and knowledge that is available. And doing it brings us to our next point, might require you to be uncomfortable. Look, at the end of the day, when you get joy out of being uncomfortable, knowing that's moving you forward towards your goal, then you're going to accelerate yourself, and you're going to grow, and you're going to rise above the competition, because a lot of people do things to be comfortable. Okay, now I'm not saying do things that are uncomfortable for pointless reasons. I'm talking about doing things that are going to make you uncomfortable, that's going to grow you, like making the sales calls, putting yourself out there on social media, whatever it is, taking action that are actions you got to take in your business that causes you to develop persistence, self-discipline, and willpower, and things like that. All these things that make you feel uncomfortable. Waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning instead of sleeping in, whatever it is. Number 31, reach up in relationships. Okay, surround yourself with people that are at your level, yes, and try to actively seek people that are at a higher level than you, that could raise you up to their level. They might not have the time to invest in you, to jump on a phone call and so forth, but there's different ways of getting access to them. Maybe they have mastermind groups. Maybe invest in them, give to them in some shape or form, and they're more likely to reciprocate. Okay? They're more likely to invest time in you if you're at a lower level, and they're at a higher level if you're a giver. So that's why I recommend reading that book I mentioned earlier, Be a Go-Giver. It's a very, very important skill. If you're a go-giver, then you're going to find yourself aligning automatically with people at a higher level, because then you're going to know what value is to another person. If you understand what value is to another person, and you know how to create the value that they want and give them that value, then you're going to have all kinds of people that are going to want to be around you. And they can be at a higher level of success in business, but because you create value for them, they're going to want to be around you. But if you come off with taking energy and you're not contributing then the world is not going to give to you. It does not work that way. You must invest. Number 32 is be disciplined. Be disciplined. Very important. All the stuff we're talking about right here, all the stuff in the book, is quite pragmatic and action-oriented, and it could be applied starting right now. You can look at everything that you're doing right now, and based on the notes that you've gotten, link to the description of the mind map. Get the mind map, study the notes, get the book, study the book. Just be disciplined. Apply it. Develop the skill of self-discipline. Understand that if you can discipline yourself, one of the greatest quotes I learned from Brian Tracy, one of my favorite audio programs, I remember listening to it over and over again when I was 25 years old, when I would drive to work, was 21 Secrets of Self-Made Millionaire. I would listen to that for years. It was probably the only thing that played in my car for a majority of the time. I did listen to music and stuff like that. 21 Secrets of Self-Made Millionaire. I probably remember the entire audio program through memory. One of the greatest quotes in there is, if you can discipline yourself to do what you know you have to do, whether you feel like it or not, your success is virtually guaranteed. So it's important to develop self-discipline and apply. If you want a copy of the mind map, links in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.